Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're looking at, well, an incredible story, really. The cruise industry's journey from, frankly, in a pandemic disaster zone to a record-breaking comeback.
It's quite the turnaround.
Absolutely. We've got sources tracking it all, how they went from being this global epicenter to getting more passengers than ever just 4 years later.
Yeah.
So our mission here is to unpack how they pulled off that survival, what it actually cost them, and importantly, the big risks they're facing right now.
Okay.
Let's kick off with that initial shock, that moment of extreme vulnerability. It really started with the Diamond Princess, didn't it? The first big outbreak outside mainland China.
It did, and the initial findings were, well, terrifying. It showed just how fast a closed setting like that can amplify things, epidemiologically speaking.
Like a perfect storm.
Exactly. The studies confirmed the transmission rate was extreme. They figured that not the reproductive number, how many people one infected person infects on average.
And the R0 value.
Yeah, the R0 on the Diamond Princess was estimated at, 14.8.
14.8.
Wow. I know. And remember, the early estimates for the virus out in the community were maybe around 2.79. So this was hugely different.
That kind of spread just throws the whole model out the window.
Yeah.
And you mentioned the quarantine itself kind of backfired?
Well, yeah. The initial approach, confining passengers, it seemed logical, but the operational side, things like crew delivering thousands of meals, often sharing equipment.
Okay.
It basically turned essential crew members into unintentional vectors. They had to keep the ship running, but it meant the lockdown couldn't really stop the spread. Exponential spread continued despite it all.
So that operational necessity became a critical failure point.
Precisely. And that failure sent immediate catastrophic shockwaves economically. You had over 40 ships with outbreaks. Pretty soon, almost the entire global fleet just stopped sailing.
The total halt. The financial hit must have been staggering.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
Immediate and vast. These ships, they're incredibly complex assets. You can't just turn them off. Keeping them idle in what's called warm layup, meaning you keep engines ready, basic systems running, a minimal crew on board for maintenance and safety. Well, that costs millions of dollars.
Millions.
Per vessel, per month.
Wow. Just sitting there. That's an immense fixed cost trap.
Exactly. So to survive, they had no choice but to take on billions in new debt, just huge amounts of borrowing.
Which explains the high debt levels we still see today, right?
Yeah.
That leverage. How did needing all that cash so fast affect, say, the crew during the shutdown?
Well, it really exposed the fragility in their existing labor model, didn't it? Suddenly you had this immense debt pressure, intensifying the need for cost savings everywhere.
And that played out how?
It played out, quite frankly, as a humanitarian crisis. You had over 100,000 crew members stuck offshore worldwide, basically in floating quarantine, often unpaid, unsure when or how they'd get home.
Stranded.
Completely. And it really shone a harsh light on the whole flag shopping system, where ships are registered in countries with, let's say, less stringent labor protections. Emergency support just wasn't built into the cost structure.
Okay, so a massive crisis on multiple fronts. How did they even begin to rebuild trust and get back to sailing? It seems like they had to engineer trust, almost literally.
That's a good way to put it. A key turning point was the science, the epidemiological finding that tiny airborne particles, aerosols, were the main way it spread, not just contaminated surfaces.
So breathing the same air was the bigger risk.
Exactly. And that realization demanded a massive technical overhaul. They essentially had to turn the ships into health fortresses.
Wow.
Primarily through the HVAC systems, heating, ventilation, air conditioning. They retrofitted them across the fleet to supply 100% fresh, outside air to all indoor spaces, cabins included. No recirculation of potentially contaminated indoor air in public areas or rooms.
Okay, constantly flushing the air out.
Right. And crucially, they upgraded the filtration. Minimum MRV13 filters. These are high-efficiency filters capable of capturing those fine aerosol particles. So the air inside the ships suddenly became much, much cleaner than in most buildings ashore.
So technical fixes were key. But you mentioned regulatory changes, too, something about refunds.
Yes, that was critical for consumer confidence. The Federal Maritime Commission, the FMC, here in the U.S., stepped in. Before the pandemic, if a cruise was canceled, lines often just gave you future cruise credits, or FCCs. You couldn't always get your cash back easily.
Right, you were locked in.
Exactly. The FMC changed the rules. They mandated that passengers were legally entitled to a full cash refund if a sailing was canceled or delayed by 3 or more days.
So you weren't risking losing your money if things went wrong again.
Precisely. It took away a major psychological barrier to booking. People felt safer putting down deposits, knowing they could get their cash back if needed. It made the risk feel much more manageable.
And clearly it worked. The recovery was, what, V-shaped?
Absolutely dramatic. We saw global passenger numbers hit a record 34.6 million in 2024. That's higher than before the pandemic. Demand isn't just back, it seems structurally higher now.
Suggests people buy into the health fortress idea.
It seems so. And there's another big shift happening alongside that growth. The demographics. Millennials are now the biggest group of ocean cruisers.
Really, outpacing boomers and Gen X.
Yeah. They're the core market now. And that changes the game because, this generation brings different expectations. It's not just about safety anymore.
Right. So summing this all up, the industry survived a near-death experience by taking on massive debt and making huge technical investments in safety. But now
they're juggling that enormous debt load, servicing those billions they borrowed, while also trying to meet the demands of this newer, younger customer base. It's a real tension.
balancing act.
Definitely. The industry proved it could engineer its way through a public health nightmare helped by regulation. But here's the kicker, that survival came at a huge financial cost, the debt. And now their key demographic, millennials, increasingly demand strong sustainability practices.
Which often costs more, potentially conflicting with paying down debt and the old cost efficiency model.
Exactly. So the big question is, can this newly fortified but heavily indebted cruise industry handle future bumps in the market while satisfying both its financial obligations and the growing environmental demands of its core passengers? That's something for you to mull over.